Greetings, lovers of the Bible. Today we're going to begin a little series on the Book of Ruth, one of the shortest books of the Bible and one of the most beloved books, but not as well known by Catholics as by members of other denominations or by the members of the Jewish faith. And this is because when we put the new lectionary together in 1969, expanding the number of Bible readings available, somehow the Book of Ruth got lost and fell through the cracks. So we Catholics mainly know our Bible through hearing it in church, and we never hear the Book of Ruth in church, and so we need to play some catch up. So I'm going to do 6 little episodes on the people in the Book of Ruth. There are 16 individuals mentioned by name in the 4 short chapters, and many of them are very interesting characters and give us a glimpse into what life was like in the Holy Land 3,200 years ago. Can you imagine that? 3,200 years ago. First, there is Elimelech, the man from Bethlehem. His name, by the way, means my God is king. El is God, E is my, and Melech is king. Eli, my God, Melech is king. This very much encapsulates the spirit of the period of the Judges, when there was no king over Israel. It was a loose confederation of tribes, but God was their king. So my God is king. He was a man of some means. He had a little bit of property, some land. And if you have land, you are a step up into a higher social class. Those without land must be day laborers. Those with land are hiring the day laborers. So he belonged to the propertied class. Maybe he didn't have a lot of property, but even if you only had a little bit, you had escaped from being dirt poor. You were a person of some means. As an Israelite man, Elimelech had the duty of presenting himself before the Lord at the Ark of the Covenant. Elimelech's land yielded the grain and fed the donkey, and then Elimelech led the donkey to the festival to hand over the first fruits to the priests, who in turn were able to feed their families. Once or twice a year, Elimelech would take his donkey on a little longer expedition, carrying produce to Jericho, which was the major commercial center of that part of the world. Jericho was a wealthy city, the center of salt trade for the entire Middle East, selling slabs of salt harvested from the Dead Sea shore. People had to have salt, not only for their table use, but also for all of their animals. Elimelech would deliver produce to Jericho, place the produce in the farmer's market and sell it, and then purchase salt to bring back to Bethlehem for himself and also for any neighbors who were not fortunate enough to have a donkey of their own. So he made a little money off the side, transporting salt to the people in the Bethlehem area. This was good business for Elimelech. On the religious festivals, Elimelech met other men and other farmers from all 12 tribes of Israel, gathered on the same days for the great feasts before the ark. On his business trips, on the other hand, he met people from many other countries. People came from Iran and Turkey, from Arabia and Egypt, and from Babylon, bringing their textiles, their gold work, their precious metals, their incense, their own distinct plants and animals, to trade in the markets of Jericho and transport salt back where they came from. Elimelech couldn't understand the Iranians or the Egyptians, But he had some ability to communicate with the Northwest Semites, the Phoenicians, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Arabs, the Babylonians, especially with the Moabites who lived very close to Israel, whose language was similar to Hebrew. Every November, Elimelech would meet up with his friends from Moab, and they would chat about the weather and the crops and the animals and the family situations back home. And his Moabite friends would ask him, Elimelech, what's going on up there at Bethlehem? And he would answer, I've just gotten married. I found this beautiful wife. She's just so pleasant. In fact, her name is Naomi, which means pleasing. And they said, well, congratulations, Elimelech. That's wonderful. You'll be able to start a family now. Then the next year, Elimelech meets up with his Moabite friends in Jericho, and they ask, what's happening up there in Bethlehem, Elimelech? And Elimelech says, I'm a father now. I have a wonderful baby boy. He's healthy and happy. His name is Mahlon. And they said, congratulations, Elimelech. You have an heir. You have someone to take over the place after you and help you in your old age. That's terrific. And then the next year, they meet up again, and the friends say, hey there, Elimelech, what's happening up there in Bethlehem? And he says, I have son number 2. I have a beautiful second boy named Kilion, and he'll help out a great deal on the farm. And if any problem comes up with Mahlon, like he doesn't like to farm or he perhaps is ill, then Kilion will be able to take over for me. So I have a plan B now in addition to a plan A. Everything is likely to work out. Everything did go fine for Elimelech and his wife and family for 10, 15 years. And then one year, he had a small load of goods to deliver to Jericho. Problem was no rain that summer. And the next summer, and the next. Drought dug its heels into the hill country of Judah. The first to suffer were those without any land, the day laborers, taking in no income. They and their families began to starve. Those with land, like Elimelech, could do better at surviving. They could eat their sheep. They could raise goats, which can forage almost anywhere, and survive on goat milk and goat cheese and goat schnitzels. But when there was no pasturage left for the donkey, that was the moment of crisis. If you have to eat your donkey, you have just lost your business. You've had to eat your farm equipment. You've had to eat your tractor. You've had to eat your pickup. And when the drought is over, you have no means of tilling the land and delivering the produce to markets or to festivals. So at that moment of crisis, Naomi spoke, and she said to her husband, couldn't any of those friends that you know around the world, couldn't they help us at a time like this? And it happened that the connections were good. And Elimelech knew of a Moabite who needed a manager for his place because he had only daughters. And so Naomi said, we're leaving in the morning. And they loaded up the donkey and took off for the land of Moab. They got there, and Elimelech died. Yes, he is introduced in verse 1 of Ruth. He is named in verse 2 of Ruth. He dies in verse 3 of Ruth. And it is not recorded that he ever spoke a word. So we know very little about Elimelech except the general course of his life. But he is a shadow over the entire book of Ruth because he was the man who owned the land. He was the pater and his was the patrimony. And it was left to his sons and to their wives and to their descendants. And it is the issue of the book. Who will get the patrimony of Elimelech? To find an answer to that question, come back again for our next episode on the second person to be introduced in the book of Ruth, the mother-in-law of Ruth, Naomi. See you then.